it takes focus and like persistent focus. Because like,
well, it's hard. It's your mind works. Your mind plays tricks on you.
Mm-hmm.
Ghetto Boys sing about that. It's like it's hard to. It's hard. The insecurity, the fear, the imposter syndrome. It's like all of that stuff is real, and you don't come from this, and you typically are working in an environment where your culture isn't as represented as other cultures.
Uh-huh.
You feel like you're coming from behind the eight ball sometimes.
Yep.
So that's another factor to play. So your mind is constantly bombarded with a lot of different thoughts other than the thing that you're there to do.
Right.
So your ability to step out of those fears and insecurities and anxieties and to focus on the task at hand, to me, plays a lot of a role into your degree of success or lack thereof.
That's very true. Mastermind family, welcome back to the show. I am your host, JoJo, and today's Artist Motivation, we bring on the hottest, latest artists and allow them to bring insight, hope, inspiration, so you can go out and create amazing content and be successful. Our guest star of the day is an American screenwriter and producer, has worked on shows like The Boondocks, My Wife and Kids, Everybody Hates Chris, Those Who Can't, Marvel's Runaway, Stars, American Gods, and is co-executive producer for Hulu's Wu-Tang American Saga. Not only that, he has also been awarded Peabody Awards, American Film Institute, Writer's Guide of America, BET Comedy Awards, and NAACP Image Awards. And without further ado, Rodney Barnes, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Rodney, I got to ask you this question, man. Like, how did you actually get started on your journey as a writer back then and now being a producer / screenwriter and working on amazing shows and projects like you're doing right now?
It's a loaded question. Because I don't think it's a long journey, and I think writing found me. I didn't really find writing. I think when I was in the 8th grade, I had a teacher tell me that if I stopped being a class clown and focused on being a writer, I could be a really good writer.
Oh, wow.
And I never really stopped being a class clown, but in the back of my mind, I always thought I could be a writer, just because that teacher planted the seed in my head. And, after a lot of trying a bunch of other things and failing, I figured I would give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at Howard University, I was also working as a production assistant on movies in the Maryland and D.C. area. I worked on Clay and Present Danger and The Pelican Brief and Major League 2 and a bunch of movies like that. And then I went to Virginia and I worked on a movie, Major Pain, with Damon Wayans.
Wow.
And Damon took an interest in me. I told him I wanted to be a writer. And he sort of supported that with allowing me to work with him for a bunch of years. And then I think it was 95 or 96, I got up the nerve, based on his suggestion, to move to L.A.
Wow.
Lived in my car for about a year and just toured about, trying to figure everything out, figure out my way. And had a bunch of ups and downs. And then I reconnected with Damon, and he told me he had this show, My Wife and Kids, that might get picked up, and if I wanted a job as a punch-up writer, I should try out. So I did, and I got hired for a day, and I just kept coming back.
Wow.
And after a while, they gave me an opportunity to be staffed, and I was a staff writer, and kind of the rest is history. It sort of just kept going.
Man, I mean, that there's just so much already in that. I mean, were you nervous just like taking the leap of faith to like move to LA? And on top of that, how did you just manage to keep your mental, focus and stability, while living in your car?
There was my time in Maryland had kind of come to an end. I kind of knew what life there would be. Nothing against my hometown, but it was predictable. And even living in my car was sort of not like as bad as it sounds because I was close to what I wanted to do. You know, I was in LA. I was a production assistant on a lot of movies. I worked on Blade. I worked on the Rush Hour movies. I was a stand-in for Michael Clark Duncan on the movie The Green Mile.
Wow.
I did a bunch of things, and so even though I hadn't reached my goal, I still was in a position where I was doing a lot of cool stuff, and I was learning a lot about the industry, because when you don't come from LA and you didn't go to USC or NYU or any of those fancy schools, you really don't understand the culture of Hollywood and how it works. And I got an opportunity up close and personal to sort of figure that out before the writing thing started to work for me. So, you know, it all kind of came together in the way I think it should have, even though I was frustrated and making no money and damn near getting evicted from time to time. And, you know, my spirits would get low, and I would call friends back home and say, maybe I should give this thing up, and they would encourage me to stay. You know, I never thought at that time it would become what it's become. But even trying to achieve something was better than settling for, you know, oh, well, it didn't work out, falling back into a life I really didn't want.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to, you know, try something than to not try at all, and say you actually are pursuing something that's, you know, worthwhile, or your dream or something, than not do it at all, like you were saying.
Well, I think the biggest thing is when you don't come from LA or Hollywood, you sort of think everybody in Hollywood must be a genius. And I'm certainly not a genius, and I haven't met any geniuses yet. What I've met is people who work really, really hard. And there seems to be a commonality amongst people who are successful, is that they just don't give up. There's a crazy persistence of just sticking with it and getting better. And I think a degree of self-awareness where you can critique yourself, where you can look at your own work and you can look at your discipline or lack thereof and see areas where you need to shore up yourself as a person. Like, I've had issues in personal relationships, my relationships with myself, just in different ways that I've kind of been the biggest obstacle to my own success. And oftentimes there's a direct correlation between things working out and me kind of getting my stuff together. And I think that's universal. You know, I think that if things were the way they are now back 10, 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to handle it. But because I've worked to try to become more mature and, you know, just evolve as a person, I think it's really helped deal with the amount of work that I do now. Yeah,
I mean, that's well said. I know that, you know, you were saying that there was times that you were ready to call it quits, and you were calling friends, and they kept encouraging you. I mean, at one point, I mean, did you just, you know, before you had your breakthrough, that you were just ready to throw in the towel? And I mean, what really kept you grounded?
Again, it's like, all right, if you throw in the towel, you sort of are conceding to the other thing. And what's the other thing? It's like I've never really excelled at anything else in my entire life. You know, I was a lower than average athlete. I was a lower than average student. You know, most of the jobs that I had weren't jobs that I wanted. They were jobs that I needed in order to survive. There weren't really any other things that I was so passionate about that made me be a better version of myself. So if I was settling for giving up, then I was sort of falling back and making a decision on the type of person I wanted to be for the rest of my life. And I didn't want that. It's and that's not to say, I mean, I came to writing in Hollywood with a bunch of insecurity, with a bunch of fear that I still have to this day. It's not like everything, oh my God, everything's great and I've overcome all of that. It's still there. I've just learned how to make a relationship with it so that it doesn't affect me as much as it did when I was younger. And I think, you know, if there's a theme to take away from this, it's more everything that's going well for me, I believe, is a direct correlation with me taking a hard look at myself and trying to just make myself a better person.
Wow, well said. So, from your experience, taking all that, I mean, what are some practical things that, let's say, current writers or, inspiring writers or artists or producers that want to try to break into the entertainment industry, what are some practical tips that you would give to them to do?
I mean, I think for me, one of the bigger things as a writer was figuring out what my voice is and what I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I started doing sitcoms, when I was doing My Wife and Kids and Everybody Hates Chris and the Boondocks,
mm-hmm.
when I would try to sell my own personal projects, I was really trying to sell the things that I had worked on. Mm-hmm. It's like it would be another version of My Wife and Kids or another version of the Boondocks or another version of Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really speaking to what I wanted to do. I was speaking to, I got really sick in 2013. And a good friend of mine, he probably wouldn't want me to say I don't know if he'd want me to say his name or not, but he asked me, he's a preacher, he came to me and he prayed for me. And I was probably at my lowest point. And he asked me, I asked him, how did things get so bad? Because I'd had a nice 10-year run of consistent work, because Wife and Kids went 5 years, mm-hmm. and Everybody Hates Chris went 4, mm-hmm. and I was doing the Boondocks on top of it and rewriting movies. It seemed like from a financial place, I was doing really, really well. Mm-hmm. Inside, not so much, but outside, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me, when I asked him that question, he said, well, why do you do what you do? And I said, well, when I was a kid, and I was a voracious film, movie, book, comic book, I just absorbed it all. That's all I really did.
Mm-hmm.
And probably why I was such a bad athlete. And I said there was a direct relationship between the things I was seeing, and I would get inspired. I had friends that hated to go to the movies with me because I would want to stay and watch it again and again and again. There was a buddy, I just went back home, as a friend of mine,
mm-hmm.
who probably is listening to this, when you post it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we went to see, I don't know if it was Alien. It was either Alien or one of those movies where I would watch it I didn't want to go. We would go at the noon show, and I saw it again at the 2:00 show and the 4:00 show. He was like, dude, we get it. It's the thing comes out of his chest, and it's the same thing happens. How can you watch this over and over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling them, even back then, every time I watched it, it was something different that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And I had movies that, like Apocalypse Now or a bunch of movies that I can watch, and I see something different, even to this day, and I've seen them hundreds of times. And there was something about that relationship. It was like a heart relationship. It was a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was something. It was more than just the story being told. It was an emotional experience. And so my friend said, so is that where you're operating from now? It's a heart place, right? And I said, no. He said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm making money. Mm-hmm. And he said, I think if you go back to working from your heart and connecting your work to your heart,
mm-hmm.
things will get better for you again. And he was absolutely right. And if you look at my career,
mm-hmm.
I redefined myself. I wrote a couple of scripts that to this day sort of reestablished me in the industry. And if you look, you see the first half of my career, you see sitcoms.
Correct.
And you see the second half of my career, you see dramas and genre and comic books, and you see all this other stuff.
Correct.
And those were the things that I think really speak to what I do best, what I want to do,
mm-hmm.
and my dreams. It's like that idealistic place that you come here for. And I think I'd lost that for a minute because I really wanted to make a lot of money. And when you come from no money and you start to make money,
mm-hmm.
the money kind of clouds your perspective. And, I think that's where the danger is. And, you never want to lose your way. And I think for a moment, I won't say I lost my way, but I certainly stopped working from my heart. So my advice would be, whatever it is, if you have self-awareness, if you have something about you that's unique and everybody does, write to that, because that'll be the thing that'll make you stay up late, get up early, do the extra stuff, do the things that, separate you from other people. And, I know a lot of guys that technically, interior, exterior, the structure of a script, the react structure, the theme, and all the things that you need, the brass tacks. But it's all structure. It's all kind of soulless because they haven't put themselves into it. And I think there's something unique about your experience that if you can pour that into a story, it'll connect other people. Other people will feel it. It's like right now, I have a comic book, Philadelphia.
Right.
And it's probably the most emotional thing that I've ever done. And a lot of the stories are directly related to incidents in my own life. And I see the way that it's resonating in the way that my other comic book stuff didn't. And it's a direct correlation, I think, not so much, yes, I think I write comic books better because I've been writing them more and more, and you get better as you do something over and over.
Right.
But I think me being able to personally connect with the work in an emotional way helps the audience and the reader connect with the work in an emotional way. And that's sort of, to me, that's the advice that I was given that sort of helped me the most.
Yeah, and I think that's actually pretty practical stuff. I mean, you wanna come from a place with you're connecting your work with your heart, and people can feel the life that you're bringing to whatever you're creating, whether it's art, writing, or producing, or whatever it may be. And on top of that, self-awareness, which is key, because if you kept going down this path where you're like, yeah, I'm focused on, just making the money, you'll be lifeless with some of the stuff that you're, working on, such as, Kill Philadelphia, and also, is it Quincredibles, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, Quincredible is.
Would you mind sharing us about like those two things and how they came to be, given your past of being always interested in comics?
Yeah, comic books were my first love. My mother was a school teacher, and when I was a kid, she would do her lesson plans at the public library. And I must have been like 4 or 5 years old. And in the kids section, she would put me in so I wouldn't run away. She put me in this pen to keep the kids. And I'll never forget, there was a box under all the books of comic books, just a box of books. And that box probably today would be worth $100,000. It was like the Avengers #4, and
wow,
because all of the early Kirby and Stan Lee and Steve Ditko stuff, and I would just sit there, and I would actually ask at a certain point, could I go back with it, because I wanted to get in that box and read comic books. And it got to a place where I really developed a relationship. Like, it wasn't Curious George or Cat in the Hat or any of that stuff. For me, it was Marvel and DC. And I built a relationship with comic books that endures to this day. And after I did Falcon and Lando for Marvel, Lion Forge called and told me about Quincredible and asked me if I wanted to take a stab at the book. And I just wanted to keep writing comic books. And so I said yes. And, I'm very proud of Quinn. And the challenge is the only superpower he has is he's invulnerable. Like, he doesn't have anything else. And so he has to use his mind and be more tactful in how he fights crime, because he doesn't have super strength. He can't fly. He only can not be hurt.
Right.
So, I've kind of played with the idea of the more he can overcome fear, the better and the stronger he becomes. Kind of like a metaphor for us as human beings. Like, you begin to see clear once you're able to divorce yourself from the things about you that hold you back, intrinsically. And so I've done 2 arcs of Quincredible. The first one has already hit the stands. The second one comes out after the 7 days event that Lion Forge
Okay.
has. And I'm doing a third arc. At least they told me. They said I'm doing a third arc. I haven't done it yet. So I'm doing a third arc after that.
That is incredible. I mean, so tell us a little about Philadelphia. I mean, like, I know it's been hit.
Philadelphia, I've had it in my head since I was 8 or 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I read the early Bram Stoker as Dracula and a bunch of horror. I loved horror as a kid too.
Right.
I love vampires. Kolchak the Night Stalker, when I was a kid, it was an old TV show.
Mm-hmm.
There was a movie of the week by Richard Matheson.
Okay.
He wrote it. And it was the Night Strangler, I think. It was the Night Strangler and the Night Stalker. One of them was a vampire story. And it just stayed with me forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Salem's Lot, the miniseries, I'd read the book and then the miniseries came on and I loved both. And that stayed with me. And then when my stepfather was dating my mother, he took us to a double feature, because that's when back then when you were dating, you had to take the kid.
Yeah.
So they took me to see Blackula and Scream, Blackula, Scream.
Mm-hmm.
And they were over there kissing, and then they left me over in the corner by myself. And like, this was incredible. I'd never seen black people, like black vampires. And you know, today it's corny and it's campy and it's all of that. His afro grew when he became a vampire and all of that kind of stuff. But as a kid, this was incredible. And so, you know, as I got older, I was like, you know, how can I shave off a lot of the campiness? Because oftentimes when you see black horror films, they try to make them funny.
Right.
And I like my horror.
Right. Needs to be scary.
You know, right, I want you to take it seriously.
Right.
So, you know, I tried to pitch this idea in different forms, as a TV show, as an animated anime thing, as a movie, just as different things that just kept getting rejected and rejected and rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jason Sean Alexander and I became friends, and we pitched each other ideas. And one day I said, you know, I've got this idea I'd really love to do. And he started digging it. He was like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept pitching, and he said, let's do that. And at the time, he was doing Spawn.
Right.
He still was doing Spawn.
Still doing Spawn.
And he said, you know, I think we should do this at Image. And so I put the proposal together. It took a while for it to come together because he was so busy that he didn't really have time to draw the book and Spawn at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But once time freed up, I started writing, and you know, deal came together, and the rest is history.
Man, I mean, I guess what's the typical process for like pitching together and putting together like a proposal, like as far as like a comic or a manga that you're trying to pitch to a publisher like Image?
Well, you have to kind of scale out exactly what you want to do in each of your issues. Like, you have to present a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, when I was working at Marvel, I had no idea. I knew nothing. It's like when they threw me in, and it was like, I remember my editor coming back and said, this is so cumbersome. It's so many words. And I didn't know the relationship between words and art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at those first 3 Falcon issues, and I cringed because I did not know what I was doing.
Right.
And by issue number 4, I sort of kind of got my legs under me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and I think from that point forward, there's been a steady progression. My confidence grew and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that comes into how you structure your pitch. And the more you know about the story you want to tell, the better I think the story overall unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came to Philadelphia, because I've had it in my head for so long, I knew the beginning, the middle, and the end, not only of the first issue, but of every issue. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I just put that in a document and with a quick introduction. And like, I did the introduction, this is what the world is, and then issue 1 is this happens, issue 2, this happens, issue 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you present it to the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And the publisher either says yes or no. And, Jason had a lot of cachet and image because of Spawn and because he is who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they liked the idea and loved him and had no idea who I was. And, so far, we sold out of our first printing. And
that's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And people, no one said they hate it yet, which is good. And the overwhelming majority of messages I get on a daily basis are how much people dig the book. So that's always, it always feels good because so many people have done vampire stories.
Correct.
That you feel like, how can you do a vampire story that doesn't feel like the typical vampire story?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back to our earlier conversation where it's really not about the vampires. It's really about loss and hope and a desire for a better existence.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So,
man, that is crazy. I mean, I know that, coming from your background, that, that must have been like, well, it's a dream come true because that's something that you've always, always had a passion for was comics, right? So I said, so now that you're in the comic book space again, with your own creation, how does that feel to like actually have your work seen come to life?
It feels great. Jason's gonna hate this part, but I still worry. I have anxiety, crazy anxiety, and so it's hard for me to enjoy it as much as I probably should because I want it to be something it can't be, and that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always trying to like beat the last issue and top myself, and instead of just writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's wrong, but it's something that I do. And so it's hard to just sit back and enjoy like Jason does. Jason celebrates everything. He does it exactly the way you're supposed to do it. Every victory, hey, dude, we got a book coming out this week. And he's like, yay. And then I'm like, oh, God, I hope they love it. And he'll tell me to shut up and hang up on me or send me evil emojis. He's very mean guy, that Jason Sean Alexander. But, under all of that, I'm incredibly grateful to be part of the community. I would love for comic books to be a part of my life for the rest of my life because I love them. I think it's something about, it's a very passionate fan base, just the comic book world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you see that on Twitter more than any place else.
Yep.
And sometimes that yields negative things, but oftentimes they're good things. And, I just want to stay in the space. It's not about money. It's not about, oh my God, you're going to make a movie or you're going to make a TV show. It's like all those things are great, but there's something about the simplicity of it that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Moore's and Frank Miller's and, all of the stuff that Neil Gaiman's, just people that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Gaiman, I worked on American Gods, and Neil Gaiman signed all of my Miracle Man issues that he did, my original Miracle Man issues.
What?
And so, I'm like a little kid.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm looking at him right now as we're talking on my wall,
mm-hmm.
praying. And it's like to be able to be a part of that world and hopefully be able to do something that some people enjoy. There's no greater feeling in the world. So I hope this ride keeps going as long as I keep going.
I mean, it's an amazing feeling to just be able to, tell a good story that people actually enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just it's the best feeling ever. And I imagine, are you going to be doing any con tours for this 2020 or?
Jason, I let Jason handle that because sometimes I do the wrong stuff because I don't know what to do. So I go to the obscure thing when nobody shows up and we end up sitting there talking about the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, Jason's like, no, you do it with me and we figure it out. We have another book that we hope to get out this year along with the second arc of Philadelphia. So we'll probably be seeing a lot of each other for 2020. So I'm allowing him. Yes is the answer.
Okay.
Which ones I don't know. Probably San Diego and New York more than anything else. But hey, I know he wants to do a couple of overseas ones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It would be great to do. I'm still balancing a TV career because I'm an executive producer on tentatively Showtime, the LA Lakers story for HBO. Mm-hmm. And we're in production now. And I've got a movie and I've got a mini series I'm doing and a bunch of other things.
How do you manage all of that? What keeps you going?
Well, I got kids. They keep wanting to eat and live in LA. And if you don't make money in LA, you go homeless.
Right.
They're pretty simple, practical motivators that keep me going. Mm-hmm. But, all of that said, I just, I love what I do. It's hard, but I love what I do. I'm fortunate to be able to do it. I'm grateful. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing now is stuff like I enjoy working on Wu-Tang and, going to Staten Island and hanging with RZA and making a TV show that people seem to appreciate. American Gods was, an experience of a lifetime. Right now with Showtime, working with my good friend and partner, Max Borenstein, we've written a movie and we're doing this and working with Adam McKay, an Oscar winner. It's
man.
It's kind of, it's a great space to be in. So, like I said, it's a challenge though. For anything that sounds like it's, great, believe me when I tell you it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And, there's a price that you pay. It's hard to balance an interpersonal life and, along with your professional life. It's mm-hmm. the hardest thing in the world. And what you find is something has to give. Mm-hmm. I think to get good at this for a period of time in your life, this has to be the most important thing. That's a controversial thing to say, mm-hmm. but I believe it to be true. I think for anything that you do, like for a minute, it's got to be, in order to get good enough, mm-hmm. it's got to be the priority. And then you have to figure out how to integrate it into your life. If you have a mate, you have to find a mate that can deal with someone going in a room and shutting a door for hours at a time and, separating yourself from the world and understanding the temperament of a writer. Mm-hmm. And again, it comes back to how you manage your life. And I think being able to better manage my life as I get older, mm-hmm. Health, affects your focus. And being a writer is a sedentary dynamic, at least for me. And I'm either sitting in a chair talking or I'm sitting in a chair writing.
Right.
And trying to figure out how to get exercise, because then there's the flip side of working on set. Is you're working on set for 12, 14 hours a day, eating really bad food, and sitting even still. It's all of those factors that no one tells you about when you're thinking about writing. Like when I had the romantic idea of being a writer. Like I'm going to sit by the ocean and, I'm Hemingway. I'm going to come up with my masterpiece. And that's not what it is. Wow. It's kids yelling in your ear and fighting while you're trying to work. And, right now our office is at least a good hour and a half, 2 hours away. So I got to drive there.
Wow.
Drive 4 hours a day. I'm on the road just to get to a place to talk for 8 hours, 10 hours.
Jeez.
And, it's just, I think it's not really complaining. It's like saying there is a reality to the price that you pay to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's not always like as romantic as I would like for it to be.
That's what I was getting ready to ask you. I was going to ask you, surely, being in the entertainment space, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows.
When we did Wu-Tang, I took a picture on Facebook. Mm-hmm. It was minus 15. We were shooting at World Trade Park, and it was 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And I had been in LA for a while, so even though I had layered, there was no such thing as layering at this point. Like, I may as well have been naked. And I was so cold, and I was so sad, and I felt old. It's like I'd never felt this old before. I'm not 75, but I felt like I was 75.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cold. You could have robbed me at any moment because I couldn't move. And there was a little heater. I must have looked bad because the location manager gave me a little portable heater next to my chair. I didn't move from that heater all day. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat. I just sat there next to that heater. I don't know what they shot that day. For that day, I was the worst producer I think in the history of Hollywood because I was so cold.
Yeah.
And, I was telling Alex E., who's our showrunner,
Mm-hmm.
he said, "How's it going?" And I was like, black people are tropical people. We weren't meant to be in this type of... I wasn't built for this, And like I said, I had been, sitting for 6 months. So I was in the worst condition I've ever been in. And I've been in pretty bad condition in my life. So you add that and the cold together, oh, God, it was embarrassing. And they wouldn't let me come home. They made me stay for a month and a half. But, that's like I said. So, yeah, you see the show and people say, "Oh, my God, Wu-Tang, I love Wu-Tang."
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of shake my head like, I just feel cold. A cold shiver. Every time somebody says Wu-Tang, I think of being out in World Trade Park. Because you got the water. You're shooting up against the water.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the cold.
Oh, my goodness. That's
and
a
it's
terrible
like all
combo.
of it together. And they put you in a little tent. That tent doesn't help anything. And it was bad. It was abuse. I felt abused doing that. So I can talk about it now, like, cathartically.
Right. But at the time, it was painful.
At the time, and I just took a picture and I put it on Facebook and asked everybody to pray for me. I didn't know if I would make it.
Man.
And I made it, obviously, because we have this conversation right now.
Correct.
But, yeah, man, it's not as romantic as it sounds, but
Mm-hmm.
it's rewarding. It's as rewarding as it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult. And for anybody who's done it, it was another thing, too, when it wasn't working for me. There was a period of time, like I said, when I was sick and I was trying to work my way back into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this critic thing. I would critique movies and different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped doing that because I realized how hard it is to make things. And oftentimes when you see people's names on things and credits, you think if you don't like the movie, that person's responsible. And there's so many other factors that come into whether a thing works or doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
that everybody's trying to do their best. And it really requires some empathy for creative people when things don't work. When they do work, fantastic. It's almost like a miracle.
Right.
But when they don't work, it's like, it's not that person tried any less than the person who tried that made something that did work.
Yeah.
And there's so many, there are other producers, there's a studio, there's a network, there's so many things that get in the way that affect how a thing ends up by the time you see it on the screen, be it a movie screen or a TV screen, that it's hard to really blame any one person for one thing, good or bad.
Yeah.
Usually it's a team of people that, that make things.
Yeah, and that's a valid point that you're saying, and that's what I was going to ask. Like, what actually makes like something good? Like, what makes a good series? What are some successful traits that a series that has potential to actually do well has? Like, is there any formula for that, or not really?
Yeah, I think it usually starts with the people at the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it all starts with the idea, and then the ability of the people who create the show to effectively produce the show, and then to make it again and again and again. And if you look at a show like The Sopranos, and you look at David Chase and Terrence Winter and all of the great writers and directors that they had,
Mm-hmm.
it's a singular vision that made it all the way through. And whatever your thing is, typically it starts at the top, but it doesn't stay at the top. I'll say this about Adam McKay and working on Showtime.
Mm-hmm.
He creates such a great environment on set that it makes you want to come to work. It makes you want to be a part of it. It makes you feel like we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And the things that I've found, the things that I've been on that work, typically that's sort of the theme of the production. It's like everybody wants to be there. I had a moment where I had an epiphany when I was working on the Green Mile.
Mm-hmm.
I was a stand-in, like I said, for Michael Clark Duncan, and Michael, at a certain point, didn't want to do his off-camera work,
mm-hmm.
and so they let me do it. And I don't know anything about acting. I'm not an actor. And I'm in a couple of things, but I'm horrible in the things that I'm in. You could tell that somebody thought, hey, it'd be great, put Rodney in there. And I look like I'm just there to be in there for the second. And I had a moment where there's a scene. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Green Mile.
I have.
Okay, there's a moment where Tom Hanks, Percy, the bad guy, steps on the mouse, says his line, walks away.
Uh-huh.
Tom Hanks picks up the mouse. John Coffey puts his hand through the cell and says, give him to me, boss.
Mm-hmm.
He gives him to him, he cups his hands, and he blows life back into the mouse.
Right.
And that happens, and it's my turn to say, give him to me, boss. And Tom looks up at me, and this is a rehearsal. And he's so convincing that I really want to bring this mouse back to life. I'm not magical in any way. There's nothing about me that's magic. But, and I think it was the day that Stephen King was on set.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, I look at Tom, I looked at Stephen King, I looked at Frank Darabont, our director, and I asked myself, what was the difference between all of those men and me?
Mm-hmm.
And the conclusion I came to is they were completely committed to the moment. And I was just happy to be there.
Wow.
And so I was asking myself, how could I find within myself the focus to be in the moment
mm-hmm.
of whatever it is that I was doing? I haven't achieved it. I've achieved moments of it. I haven't gotten to a place where there's a singular focus that is just, burning and driving over a sustained period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had moments where I've been able to focus enough to do my best work.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think, to me, that's another key. Focus is another key to things working.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, having the absolute focus and just being in the moment kind of keeps you on track to, delivering and making something that is like a masterpiece or something that's even, worthwhile or anything like that. It takes focus and like persistent focus.
Well, it's hard. Your mind plays tricks on you.
Mm-hmm.
Ghetto Boys sing about that. It's like it's hard to, it's hard, the insecurity, the fear, the imposter syndrome, it's like all of that stuff is real. And you don't come from this. And you typically are working in an environment where your culture isn't as represented as other cultures.
Uh-huh.
You feel like you're coming from behind the 8 ball sometimes.
Yep.
So that's another factor to play. So your mind is constantly bombarded with a lot of different thoughts other than the thing that you're there to do.
Right.
So your ability to step out of those fears and insecurities and anxieties and to focus on the task at hand, to me, plays a lot of a role into your degree of success or lack thereof.
That's very true. That's well said. This is probably a loaded question, and maybe you can't answer it. But in any way, how did you feel about the direction that was, taken with American Gods and Orlando?
How do I feel about it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a whole lot that I can say other than I love Orlando. I love working with Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
Orlando was the key to me working on American Gods. He helped carve out a path for me my episode, of course, was the black episode.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the specificity and nuance that I wanted to get in that episode, Orlando paved the way for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Orlando cared deeply about how the characters of color and women, the LGBTQ characters were portrayed. And I'm not just on set and to producers. Like when we would go, Orlando's a vegan, and he took me to some of the worst places to eat food. Oh man, it tastes just like steak. It didn't taste anything like steak. And we would talk long into the night of ways that we could best represent those gods and storylines. And you know, he's a real dude. He's a real brother, and I love him. And you know, I hope that the things that weren't right become right for him, for everybody. I mean, I think his heart is in the right place for sure, and his mind is in the right place. He's a brilliant man, and as far as a Renaissance man, a guy that could just do anything. It's like I can watch those soliloquies that you've seen online. I watch him do that and then walk over and say, "Hey man, what time we gonna go eat?" And then go right back and do it again. And it's like I'm amazed. I don't remember who I am sometimes. And he can remember 40 lines that he has heavily contributed to, if not completely written, and just walk away like it's absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And I'm amazed. Like there's very few people that I've worked with that were even in the range of Orlando, and he's a brilliant brother.
Wow. Talk about being in the moment.
Yeah.
So, having those experiences, I wanted to actually ask you about this as well. You worked on movies, like you said, Blade and 15 Minutes, and what are some things that go into producing that most people wouldn't know about? I know you mentioned a couple of them, but I just wanted to ask for a couple more.
As far as producing is concerned, it's a thankless job. It's a lot harder than people think. I think the guys that are really successful, like Will Packer and a few others that I know, they really work hard and they have to hustle 24/7. And a lot of times, with all of them, you see the success, but you don't see how many punches and blows they had to take along the way to get there. And I think, it's kind of the way I was joking about the cold in Staten Island. There's a cold. You got to be able to take a good ass whipping to be in this on a regular basis.
Shoot.
And emotionally, and I think producers in particular that have to deliver bad news, that have to take the lumps, that have to take all of the difficult aspects of what Hollywood is. I salute those guys. And I'll say, even for myself, in the times where things haven't been what I wanted them to be, you've probably named off 7, 8, 9, 10 shows that I've been a part of. You don't see the failure. You don't see the defeat. You don't see the times when things didn't work out and when someone hated my script or someone, I can tell you that 90% of my career is hearing the word no.
Shoot. Wow.
And you know me, and we're talking because of the 10% of the times that there was a yes. And it's gotten to a point now where something bad happens, and I feel it. It hits me. It lingers with me because I'm a sensitive person. I think most creative people are. And I keep going.
Yeah.
That's the only key. And I think, you gotta have that kind of stomach in order to be able to do this, because no matter how nice of a person, I read this the other day and I believe it to be true, no matter how nice of a person you think you are, no matter how good you try to be, there's somebody that's going to be happy to hear that you just died. And that's sort of kind of what working in this business is. It's like no matter how much of your heart that you put into something, there's somebody that's going to hate it. There's somebody that's going to hate you. And you're like, wow, who, me? What are you talking about? I'm a great person. And no one has the answers. I certainly don't have the answers. I can do a correlation of things that work for me, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for the next person. I think that principles will. I think the things that you can control, showing up on time, doing your best work, trying not to be an asshole. I struggle with that one. If you can manage the things that you can manage, you probably will get some victories amongst the losses.
Wow, man, that's a big pill to swallow. Is that taking a lot of no's and just being able to just continue to do the march and just continue to do the work.
And you also have to have a vision for what you want your career to be. I was working with Jordan Peele. We had a pilot at Comedy Central together. And we were at his office one day, and we were talking about horror films. And he said, I've got this horror film I've been writing for 10 years. And he was excited about it. And he pitched it to me. I had no idea what the hell he was talking about, but I was not like I did. And when I got out of my car, I was like, I have no idea what the hell he was talking about. He was pitching me Get Out.
I figured. Wow.
And it hadn't been made yet, and any of that. And not long ago, I was at his office. And that brother looked so happy. And he had an entire vision. It didn't matter that I didn't see it. He saw it.
Yeah.
And everything he's doing, from Us to this Nazi show to all the different things, he had a vision for what he wanted his career to be. And even though he wasn't there yet, it was just a matter of time. He was going to do things like, I've never seen anyone methodically put together a vision and execute it with perfection as he has. And I think for all of us, whether it's life or whether it's the business, you sort of have to have a vision for what you want it to be. You can't approach it like a job because it's so transient. It's like, I found that period around when I got sick, like I was seen as a black sitcom writer.
Man.
That's what my agents were selling me as, because I'd worked on black sitcoms.
Right.
And then there's that period where they're not making black sitcoms, or they're making two, and there are 5,000 black sitcom writers looking for jobs, and there's only room for
10. Oh, 10.
Yeah. No, maybe 10. Oh, no, you're probably right. I'm going to go 4 to 5. And you got all of these people trying to get that one job. And you can get lucky and be that person, and the thing can become a hit, and you can get a job for 5 or 6 years. And it made me start to look at my career like a career rather than trying to get a job. And it was like, okay, how can I, if I was an investor and I was investing in myself, I would kind of look at it like a portfolio. And what's the best kind of portfolios? From what I hear, it's the ones that are diversified. So, all right, all of this is storytelling. Whether it's a comedy, whether it's genre, whether it's horror, whatever it is, it's all storytelling. So how can I best, my lawyer, Darryl Miller, always says 7 streams of revenue. So if I got comic books in this one place, and I do TV shows over here, and then under the TV show thing, you got animated, you got 4-camera, you got single camera, you've got 1 hours, you got half hours, you've got all of these different things that you can do. And I've done an animated show, and I've done a 4-camera show, and I've done a single camera show. I've experienced in all of those areas. So now I can develop shows in those areas and oversee shows in those areas, as well as executive produce shows in those areas. And it's being able to spread, because no one thing, I don't believe in having all your eggs in one basket unless you're like Chuck Lorre or, Kenya Barris or Shonda Rhimes. And even with those people, they do a lot of things. They don't just do one thing.
Right.
So being able to diversify and kind of not be beholden to one idea of what a writer's supposed to be. I've tried in the past few years to, add that to my repertoire. And to lesser or greater degrees it works out. It doesn't always work out, but enough to where my phone is on, so I can talk to you right now.
Right. And I mean, obviously, you've been successful, and you're still successful, and you're still, continuing to march on and executing your vision. So
I'm doing all right. And, next month you call me, the phone could be off. So I'm glad we're doing this right now. But it's working.
And we're approaching the top of the hour, man. I wanted to ask you, two more questions.
Yeah.
So, what are some other projects that you have coming up in the pipeline? I know we talked about Quinn Credibles and Kill Will Definitely.
Yeah, the Lakers show.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
What about Atlanta's Most Wanted? Is that something that you're also doing?
No, that's gone. That's died. See,
okay.
That's one of the things that died. Poor Wikipedia never. See, Wikipedia doesn't erase stuff, so you get to see all of the stuff that you hope would become a thing that didn't become a thing. Atlanta's Most Wanted. I love that script.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we had a shot to get on the air, and it just didn't get picked up. So maybe it'll come back around at some point. Some things do, but don't know if that one will.
Damn, okay. Makes sense. So, Ronnie, what are some final words of wisdom you would like to impart on the show?
Wisdom is a tough word. I don't know if it's going to be wise. I tell you, like I said, it works for me. I try never to get too down or too up. It frustrates people sometimes. I find it hard to celebrate because and this isn't good. Again, like I said, is it words of wisdom? I know that success is relative, and in the moment when something is working, I try to savor that moment. But if you get too high, just know that you're going to be humble. This business is going to humble you, regardless of who you are. Life is going to humble you. And so if you can get humble, stay humble, be realistic about the process, mm-hmm. I think anybody that really wants to make it in this can make it in this. Like I said, I think it's a matter of how much you commit to it, mm-hmm. how much dedication you can apply.
Yep.
I don't think there are any barriers, especially in today's world. I think talent and hard work and persistence wins. And talent can be developed and cultivated over time. I think now is the best time. You got 600 shows on TV right now. It's a great time to jump in. It's a great time for comic books. It's a great time really just to be a creative person.
Well said. Those are some awesome words of wisdom. Rodney, I want to thank you for being on the show and just providing hope and inspiration to the people. You got to tell the people, where can they find more of your work and connect with you at?
At the Rodney Barnes on Twitter and on Instagram. Facebook is just me. I don't even know what just big picture of me. But at the Rodney Barnes, at either Instagram or Twitter is where you can connect with me. I have a website, rodneybarnes.com, that I desperately need to update, but I don't have time. But those are the places to find me if you want to connect with me.
Awesome. Mastermind family, that is going to do it for the show. We hope you enjoyed the episode with Rodney. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone. And we will see you guys on the next episode.